The episode you're about to hear is authorised by me, Kate Hulett, at 106 High Street Mall, Fremantle. People are like, well, if they're not in the news and they're not at the business dinners, then they don't count. But actually, people don't want that. They want to be spoken to like normal people about normal things that affect us every day. And that's absolutely what we've tried to do. And we've tried to do it honestly and openly and accessibly and without pretense, to talk to people and bring them along. Welcome to
A Piece of Kate. I'm Emma Pegger.
And I'm Kate Hulett.
We're recording on Wednesday afternoon. I never know what day it is right before I say that.
I know.
But it is Wednesday afternoon, from Manning Park.
And we're sitting at the stairs of a Azalea Lee homestead, built by Azalea Lee, nee Manning, and her husband Jack, and it was built in 1920.
Huh.
And it was completed in 1923, and Jack died in 1927. And then
Did you take a photo of the entrance
her
sign
death, no, this is from memory, her death in 1954, no, in the 1980s, City of Coburn and the Historical Society of Coburn restored the house and transformed it into a museum, currently closed, but we're sitting on the stairs outside.
It's so beautiful here.
Big time nice.
Like, this is the
trees.
most peaceful part of probably our month.
It's gorgeous. And then just down the way, on the other side of the car park, is a beautiful the lake.
Beautiful lake.
Yeah. Good picnic location.
So much bird life.
Kids facilities, toilets, etc.
We're here because you just had a meeting with the City of Coburn.
Oh, yeah,
so we
yes.
just came across here to
Yes.
record the pod. How was the meeting?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, obviously there's a big cohort of Coburn people in the Fremantle federal electorate. Would you like to hear how many?
Sure.
135,149 residents across 24 suburbs, including Rottnest. 62,910 employed residents. 51,000 local jobs. So most of the people who have employment in Coburn, their jobs are in Coburn. And that's quite unusual.
Oh, yeah,
So, for
cool.
example, in Fremantle, lots of people that work
they go
travelling to
elsewhere.
the city or in other areas, probably
That's
coming
cool.
to Coburn. Yeah.
So they're doing a good job at creating employment locally.
And they are home to Australia's largest marine industry. So they're good. It's a nice... I hear really good things about the City of Coburn. They invest in good stuff and... I think they've got lots of residents, so they've got a good rates base and...
They can get things done.
Yeah, they're good facilities and they invest in, culture and sports, and a bit like Melville do really well in that sort of area as well, because they've got a good rate base, whereas one of the problems with the Fremantle State and Council is that there's not very many people living in Fremantle, so they don't have very much income to spend on stuff. Anyway, it's interesting to see what an impact it can make. And they're very proactive, which I really appreciate as well.
Cool.
Anyhow...
We thought we'd talk a bit today about the idea of engagement and disengagement, because it's been mulling. We've been tossing that idea around since yesterday.
I think after our pod recording last night, we had a chat with someone who was asking us questions about our techniques and mechanisms for communicating and how and why we're choosing the way we do it, because... if you look at all the candidates across Australia running for election, we are doing some quite unique experimental things and some strategies and techniques which aren't being employed elsewhere. And he was kind of drilling down at why and how, and then we have reflected on that conversation and we thought we'd chat about it a bit today.
Well... What we thought was, I think the takeaway from that conversation that we've continued to think about, and that I think ultimately has been in my head because people keep bringing it up a lot, is this idea of engaging, this is the dumbest sentence, engaging disengaged voters. Speaking to disengaged voters. And we read that article in the West as well.
Oh, yeah.
Can you get that up?
Yeah. Let me pull it up.
That was all about, how politicians and candidates are going about trying to get the attention of those people who represent, like, you know, the majority of the kind of undecided or swinging vote in this election, and why the campaign, maybe across the board, kind of has looked the way that it does because there are all these attempts to get those people's attention. What was it? Can you...
The headline, it's an opinion piece. Headline, disengaged now for blood. Subhead
This is in the West.
Squeezed by the cost of living, outer suburban voters want someone to blame. And then there's a cartoon of a man who's kind of frowning and crouched forwards, looking a bit, and on the front of his shirt has a big off-on button and it's switched to off. He's disengaged.
It's not a very kind depiction, actually.
No, I mean, that's quite reflective of that publication, I think. Yeah, I mean, there's lots to talk about in this, isn't it? And it's tone of voice and its technique of getting to these people and why and what impact it has, why it's important, why we shouldn't write it off. I mean, where do we start?
I think the interesting thing about the conversation last night was that we were kind of being asked, you know, like, how do you speak to people who are switched off? And it was like, to be honest, I don't know that anyone in our team has necessarily found it that hard, because these people are not, like, they're just got the same problems everyone else has got. And, you know, like, if you spend the time to ask them, like you've been out doing street talk and stuff, which is obviously different to trying to reach them through making reels or doing a podcast or whatever.
Is what we're calling it.
Chat Hulett. But once you start digging in, you know, like you had that guy who was like, oh no, I don't talk politics, and then you were like, just one question, and, you know, then you're there for 30 minutes.
And that woman.
And he's like, it turns out I do have a bunch of stuff to say.
But it's not like, how do you talk to them? We're talking to an audience that we don't know the way we would talk to our friends and our family. We're not trying to talk to them like politicians or about politics. We're talking to them about the stuff they care about, the stuff we care about, in the way that we normally talk. And I think that's the crux of it. Politicians are talking in a way that we somehow just close our ears to, because it's not the way we normally talk, and it's not about the things that we normally talk about with our friends and family. So we're not talking in one-liners. We're not talking in, like, big, like, we've delivered this and that. And, you know, I think we're just talking to people like people. And then suddenly, what do you know? They're listening.
Yeah.
Do you not think that that's the kind of...
Yeah, and well, I mean, one thing that I said last night was, like, I actually think that most politicians and most journalists, or, you know, the media in general, doesn't really give people enough credit. Like, I think there's actually way more appetite out there to be, like, spoken to about important issues than most people assume, because people have real problems and they care about their families and their kids and blah, blah, blah. So it's like, yeah, absolutely. I think this assumption that people don't care, or that they're switched off, or that you're not going to be able to reach them or engage with them properly if you don't keep things super simple and short and, like, whatever, is wrong, fundamentally wrong. And also it's self-perpetuating, like, it kind of conditions then the whole landscape to be, like, shaped in that way. And then it just, you know, of course people are going to switch off, because what have they got to actually listen to? No one's telling them, no one's saying anything to them that's actually relevant to their lives.
Yeah, I mean, there's not one dinner table, pub, book club, walk around, you know, every Saturday morning that doesn't at one point touch on politics in some way, whether it's like, God, petrol's expensive, or God, the school's, you know, charging for this, or, you know, whatever it is, my frigging mortgage has gone up. I mean, all that is political. And so people talk about it, they're engaged in it in their ways. But the other thing with what you're saying is, you know, when the newspaper says everyone's disengaged and politicians are like, well, Australians don't want to hear about, you know, they just want to live their lives. But they do want to hear about it. And if you're told something so many times, then it starts to become true. And that's why when we got to someone and say, can I ask you a question about politics? They're like, oh, I'm not interested, or I don't know anything. But they do. But they've been told that they don't. They've been told that they're disengaged. They've been told that they don't care about this stuff. So then that's like they've learnt that, and then they say that back to you. But actually they do. And people, us all, have been completely disempowered by being told that, well, the Australian people don't want to know about this. They just want to know that they can turn the lights on at night. But actually, I want to know more about that. At what cost? And is it the right way that, are we being ripped off? Are we being treated well? Is are our trees going to be cut down to make toilet paper, or are they going to be retained?
I love it when you just go back to toilet paper.
Well, I know, I'm obsessed with toilets because I always need to do a wee.
Yeah, I think people do have questions, and the world's quite confusing, and they're looking for people who can make it make sense to them.
And kind of authoritarian governments and people that don't want you to participate, it's better if you're switched off because then they can just do whatever they want. They can just sign off a new gas field without us screaming about it. They can just overturn the nature positive laws and no one worries because they're being told that you should be worried about Aboriginal flags or whatever wolf dog whistle is being blown that day.
I mean, I think there's kind of two parts to this because for sure disengagement is a massive problem, and like the fact that we're all disengaging from politics is kind of how we've gotten to the point where the major parties do just like get away with murder. And we've been talking about that a lot because are you just getting eaten by mosquitoes?
Mosquitoes love me.
Just like everyone else.
And I'm just having a moment over here with a swarm. Continue.
I was going to say we've been talking about this a lot because the momentum that this campaign has generated has been really exciting. There's so many people, like you can't walk down the street without people being like, thank you so much. I love what the campaign's doing. It's so good to be excited to go and vote, et cetera, et cetera. And that is, for me, like the role of this kind of campaign and also the importance of it in the broader political spectrum, because without people re-engaging and choosing to participate again, I just don't see how else we course correct
100%.
From just becoming increasingly switched off, increasingly, and the system becoming increasingly closed to us and more opaque and working our interests less and less.
And I suppose if you think, the whole community independent movement is about going, we've got a big open door and all of you are invited in, but actually there are no walls because it was built by the community. The whole concept was built by the community. So it's completely accessible. There isn't a wall which might be the front door of a party office to try and knock on and get into and go, can you just tell me about what this is? It's just like you all care about where you live and your friends and family and your schools and your parks and your roads and your shops and how your buildings are built. Okay, let's all band together and let's take a look at this because for some reason people feel excluded from politics, for all the things that we've talked about. And this movement is kicking down all those barriers and saying, right now you're back involved and you can have a say. And that feels unusual for people and exciting.
Yeah.
And they don't feel like there's all the baggage of and expectations and kind of restrictions or whatever might have existed in party politics previously. And for them, they feel like this is a new way to engage.
I reckon it's interesting as well because some people, it does come up a lot. Like people come into the office, for example, and they're chatting to, volunteers at the desk about what the campaign's doing, how it's going, and, the fact that obviously because we ran in the state election and now we're in the federal election, they like to point out that those are two different beasts, that, state politics and federal politics are really different and the two electorates are very different, which is, of course, very true. And I feel like I had someone come in today and they said something to the effect of, I think you're doing a really good job at engaging people who are otherwise disengaged. You're doing a good job at appealing to people who aren't interested in politics or who think it's not relevant to them. And I don't know that they were necessarily meaning it as, in a negative sense. But to me, there was an element of that, because I was thinking there's kind of an undertone to that, and it's not the first time I've heard it, that is suggesting that it's somehow like a shallow thing to do to reach out to that voter rather than to, like, I don't know, what's the opposite of that? Being really dense and, you know, overly details oriented or whatever. Like, I don't know what the kind of alternative is. But if you're not engaging those people, what are you doing? Like,
it's a bit like how the rhetoric around influencers going into the budget lockup. And it's like, how dare they... you know, there should be proper economists and people with journalism degrees in there reporting on this, not those people. That's unfair. And I think, you know, more than half of the people in the Fremantle electorate are under 50, half of the voters. So that's, you know, between the age, effectively 18 to 49-year-olds. That's people who were brought up mostly with mobile phones and headlines and short attention spans and so on. And they are all, particularly those, you know, up to 30, are our future. You know, they're educating the next generation, the children who are then going to be taking on what we leave them. And it's absolutely vital that we communicate with them and we talk to them. And if till now they've been completely switched off from politics because it's been so awful and fighty and short-term and disappointing in almost every way, then we are doing... Oh, my God, there's two mosquitoes on your hand. Two on your hand! Emma!
Let's do the podcast next to a lake.
My God, I'm like...
At 5:45 p.m.
with mosquito bites. It's what we're doing is absolutely vital, because it's that I think we got really discounted in the state campaign, and I think people are like, what the hell on election night, because they hadn't been paying attention to what we'd been doing and how we'd been talking to people and the reach that we had. I think people are like, well, if they're not in the news and they're not at the business dinners, then they don't count. But actually, people don't want that. They want to be spoken to like normal people about normal things that affect us every day. And that's absolutely what we've tried to do. And we've tried to do honestly and openly and accessibly and without pretense, to talk to people and bring them along. Because it's people coming along which is going to help fix the enormous pickle we've found ourselves in. And we need to start fixing politics and making it better and more, delivering more for Australians and for us in Fremantle and for, you know, West Australians and our kids and our unborn kids. And you can't just say, well, if you're not in, you know, the Financial Times, then you don't count. And no, I don't speak like a normal politician or have a politics degree. I haven't worked in the office of a politician, and I haven't, you know, been to Canberra or whatever the one's called in Parliament House, West Australian House, Legislation House, whatever it's called. I haven't done all that stuff, and perhaps that is what we need, more people that haven't done all that stuff to bring their experience of running a small business or their experience of, you know, putting on an arts festival or exhibiting their photos, whatever it is, applying for grants, blah, 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 blah. More of those people in our government and representing us is probably going to be better than all the people that have just worked in the office of, you know, whatever, an MP for work experience.
Yeah, I mean, or all of the people who believe in that person and follow that person and voted for that person and are engaged with what that person's doing, coming along for that journey, is for the better as well, you know? Like,
totally.
The more different types of people that can get engaged in the process and that are paying attention to what's happening,
all those different ideas, all those
for
different
me, that's
experiences.
the biggest win.
All the demographics, young, old, you know, locals, people that have come here from far away who are, you know, giving all their ideas and passion and contributing to making things better, because that's all we want to do. We're not here to, like, ruin everything. We just want to make it better. We live in this beautiful, rich, thriving place. Our government should be beautiful, rich and thriving, just the same. And brave and courageous and exciting and world leading and all the things that we would expect them to be doing, like top of their game, thinking big, coming up with new ideas, we keep having these email and message correspondence with people who are like, you can't do that thing because it's going to ruin everything. And we're like, you can have that thing and not ruin the environment at the same time. Like we live in a really, it's like one or the other.
Yeah.
There's these kind of, it's awful or it doesn't happen. And it's because all we see is, our shops are all big tilt up kind of concrete boxes. They're so unimaginative. Our venues are windowless, again, concrete walled tilt ups. And we could, if we were ambitious and courageous, we could have beautiful buildings which are going to leave the most gorgeous legacy for future generations that contribute to communities and build a sense of place and passion and all of those things. We can have that, and we can also protect our biodiversity and support, a flippin' tree canopy target. We're so behind on so much stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that a certain kind of lack of imagination goes along with that disengagement, and they're often like not the same people. Even some really politically engaged people that we speak to are uninspired because the political landscape is uninspiring and they're not seeing real leadership, and therefore we don't have a lot of sort of case studies out there of what good leadership looks like and what good kind of policy looks like or what the manifestation of good policy looks like. So there's a short-sightedness about a lot of things, and I think a fear of things being done poorly. So there's a resistance
because
to any kind of change or development or whatever. So I can understand that, but that is part and parcel of the same problem, I reckon.
If our leaders aren't courageous and big ideas and future thinking, then how can we possibly be? And then we become nervous because they act nervously and they have small targets and zero ambition. So then that's how we live, with and worry and fearful and scarcity and all those sorts of things, where we live in such a rich place. We don't need to think like that at all. And I read a book by an economist about, the moonshot, when the Americans were like, we're going to get to the moon. And all the investment and huge injection into so many industries, took America leaps and bounds into, creating Wi-Fi and internet and, all sorts of things that spiraled off out of that. And the jobs, there's an anecdote of the president walking down a corridor and there's someone mopping the corridor, and he says, how are you going? What are you doing? He goes, I'm helping us get to the moon. Everyone felt a part of this ambitious goal, this project. And what do we have for that? What are we doing that's ambitious or world leading, or in almost every area we're at the bottom of the leaderboard, except for extinctions.
Yeah.
And exports and not making any money from our resources.
Yeah.
Lacking
a plan, lacking direction.
It's all bits of the puzzle. And I guess all we want to do is talk to people in straight, common sense ways and try and get them back engaged and bring them along to help, change the world. That's all. Just such a big ask. Come on. And, maybe that is Instagram Reels, maybe that's podcasts, maybe that's posters, maybe that's a billboard that's driving around,
It's a bit of everything.
It's everything, and there are so many demographics and so many people with so many opinions and so many ideas and so many worries and cares and everything like that. And we need to try and talk to everyone, and we're trying that. And we're trying new ways.
What's interesting is we saw that Grace Blakely clip the other day where she was talking about, the way that we're going to win people back over to be engaged and care about the future is not going to be it's not going to happen on TikTok, or it's not going to happen via social media. And I kind of get what she was saying, and I agree in some ways, but it's interesting that when you're out doing street talk, looking, to talk to people or door knocking or whatever it is, a lot of the time, the person that you go up to speak to has actually already seen you on the internet or they've seen a sign around. Like there's a level of familiarity with your face and your name that I think makes them comfortable to speak to you. So it's been interesting to me through the whole campaign how those two strategies work together and how complementary they are, in the sense that, like, you talk to people and then you get ideas about what people want to hear or what issues you need to look into, and then you speak about those on the internet, and vice versa. You speak about things on the internet and then people come out and want to speak about it in person. And I think that's a pretty cool little ecosystem.
And because they've seen how I talk to people, which is just like you and I are speaking now, they're like, oh, I'm comfortable in going and speak to that person. She's not in a suit behind a desk, a mahogany desk with a grandfather clock behind her. Because that's what most other politicians are like, right? You know, and it's there's suddenly this breakdown of any kind of barrier between constituent and politician. I'm not saying I'm a politician, but you know, I'm just trying to be one, I guess. But it's that's exactly what, you know, constituents should be able to come up and talk to their politician and just have a yarn. And it's fine.
And, like, kind of want to.
I mean, and it's fine for me to then to say, I almost completely disagree with everything you've said, but let's keep talking about that thing because I want to know why, you know, and maybe I need to rethink the way I think about that thing, or maybe I can tell you why I think differently, you know, and those conversations are the ones which really matter. And they're cool. I just, you know, I mean, it would be cool to do that for 3 years.
Please,
Yeah.
that one, Kate Hulett.
Yeah.
I'm sensing that we should get out of this mosquito
the lights,
hotbed.
it's almost dark.
And we're getting eaten.
I'm going to have Ross River virus or whatever it's called.
We can't run for the election
Kate,
because
the candidate is too poorly. She's in hospital. Vote one, Kate Hulett.
I'm completely devoid of things to ask the listener for. But as we say every day, we're still signing people up to work on election day. So pop onto the website and look for our volunteer page and you can sign up for a few jobs there.
Thank you so much for everyone that's donated.
Yeah.
We'll be able to tomorrow say how much we raised in our double donations mega draw this week. Anzac Day is tomorrow? No, tomorrow's Thursday.
Friday.
Anzac Day pre-polls are closed, and also on Sunday.
Closed.
On Saturday, I reckon I'll be mooching around to all the pre-polls, saying hello again to people.
And we've got one more episode this week and then episodes all next week. And then that's it. That's the end.
No way, are you joking?
Well, I mean, that's it for
on.
a piece of cake.
This is never ending.
Season 1 or whatever season this
But
is.
maybe we'll stop doing daily podcasts and do weekly. I don't know, who knows? And we need to have we have to have like a breakdown podcast where we actually break down
I mean,
mentally
if we win
and
the
physically.
election...
What will we do? Are
we'll
we
have
going to do... Okay,
podcast
question.
from Canberra.
Are we going to do a podcast from election night?
I think definitely. On election day.
Maybe it's live stream. Maybe that one is the one on Twitch.
We just
which
go
I don't know
live
what
all
it is.
day.
Yeah. Or no, just from like 6 or something like that.
Like at the
Or
party.
7. Yeah.
Could be fun.
And we can just come and go. People can just
Depending
tune
on
in.
the
It's a bit
outcome.
like proper Big Brother, Red Brother.
Maybe. Stay tuned. We'll have a think about that.
I mean, the thing is, I don't have time to think about stuff like that.
No,
It's
I
just
mean-
like, well, figure it out on as we're driving
An hour
there.
before, yeah. We'll probably just end up accidentally going live and...
Exactly, but the wrong bits, and you
Anyway.
just hear me doing a wee or something. So
That's
tomorrow
all.
will be our 20th episode. Okay, we've got some facts about that
Wowee.
tomorrow. I'll save that in my back pocket. And then next week, 25 episodes. That's mental and excellent. And then Election Day, 3rd of May, which is mental and excellent. And
Mental and Excellent is another great T-shirt.
well, it will be in the Mental as Anything font from the band. From
I can't
the
wait
80s.
for our T-shirt line.
Okay, yeah.
That's
Okay,
it. Like and subscribe wherever you're listening. This has been A Piece of Kate. See you tomorrow.
Thank you tuning out from Manning Park.
Over and out.
Yeah. I literally just killed a Mozzie and there's blood coming out of all my jeans.
You've been squirming.